Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Off the Shelf. I am Dawn Gepfer, your host of today's program, which is brought to you by the Atlanta chapter of Sisters in Crime. Sisters in Crime is an international organization that was founded to support and promote the professional development and advancement of women crime writers. Since its inception in 1986, which almost 40 years ago, membership has expanded to include all genders and any and all who support the mission of advocacy for equality in mystery and crime writing publishing. Members include writers, those published and those who aspire to be, editors, agents, booksellers, librarians, but most importantly, readers. Because where is a book without a reader? It's on the shelf. And the goal of this program is to get our guest authors' books off the shelf and into the hands of readers. So thank you for joining us today. And typically, if you've watched one of our programs before or been a part of our audience live, typically what we do is we have one guest author. But in honor of this being our 5th year, which is surprising to me, this is our 5th year of Off the Shelf, we've decided to change things up a little bit. And we have rebooked a few of our previous guest authors to check in and catch up. So I am going to begin by introducing our authors, and in no particular order, just how I have them on my little cheat sheet. And away we go. So LM Whitaker, also known as Linda, what we call her. She is an award-winning author of speculative and near-future thrillers laced with science and technology. Her stories are founded on years of research and decades of work in science and technology, beginning with a PhD from the Georgia Institute of Technology. Linda gathers inspiration in everything from the latest technological advances and scientific discoveries to her dog and to slime mold.
Oh,
Yes, slime mold. She resides with her husband in the beautiful mountains of Western North Carolina, where she likes running in the forest, gardening, cooking, and playing with her dog, Olive. Hi, Linda. Thank you for being here today.
thank you.
Next up, we have Kathy Tully. That's the pen name of E.C. Tully, a chiropractor, USA Today best-selling author, and creator of the Silver Falchion Award-nominated Dr. Susanna Shine Chiro Cozy Mystery Series. She is a graduate of Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., where she studied foreign languages and linguistics. She lived abroad in Quito, Ecuador, and worked for an international trademark and patent law firm in New York City before changing careers and graduating from Life University in Marietta, Georgia, with a Doctor of Chiropractic degree. She lives in small town Georgia with her husband and rescue cats.
Lots of cats.
Yes. D.L. Mitchell is the author of the Coral Shores Veterinarian Mystery Series and a 2024 nominee for Georgia Author of the Year. Trust the Terrier, book 1 in the series, won the Killer Nashville Silver Falchion Award for Best Cozy. That's amazing. Congratulations, Deborah. She brings her unique perspective as a practicing small animal veterinarian to the world of mystery fiction. With experience in bustling big city hospitals, her transition to a house call concierge veterinarian practice has enriched her storytelling with firsthand encounters and insights into the human-animal bond. When not writing, she loves spending time with her husband, daughter, and their menagerie of pets, planning the next travel adventure, and running on nearby trails. She's a scuba diver, but gets seasick. And when she's on the road, she travels with her espresso machine and blow up, stand up paddleboard. So a water lover who gets seasick.
Yes,
That's what I'm hearing.
Aging is unkind.
And last but not least, we have Mike Cobb. He is a writer, native Atlantan, and a student of history. His body of literary work includes both fiction and nonfiction, short form and long form, as well as articles and blogs. While he is comfortable playing across a broad range of genres and topics, much of his focus is on historical fiction, Southern literary fiction, crime fiction, and true crime. Rigorous research is foundational to his writing. He gets that honestly, having spent much of his professional career as a scientist. He splits his time between Atlanta and Blue Ridge, Georgia. So welcome everybody, and thank you so much for being here today. So what I thought I would, well, first, I want to address the audience. We have set the screen so that our panelists are stationary, and therefore we may or may not see you in the audience, just depending on how the screen formats. So we would love you to still participate in this. So our thoughts are, number one, you can raise your hand, and I think that'll move your square to where it's visible. But if not, you can put a note in the chat that you'd either like to ask a question directly or make a comment, or you can actually put your question or comment in the chat, and one of us will see it and ask it on your behalf. So, with that said, let's get started. One of the things I wanted to bring up is when I was revisiting each of you, I noticed that there were a lot of similarities, that you guys had a lot of things in common. And I thought that was a lot of fun. So I just want to kind of quickly touch on that. So number one, you guys are all writers, in the mystery genre. Duh. Okay, you're also all members of Sisters in Crime, and specifically the Atlanta chapter, which we love. But I noticed, like, we have a couple of runners. Deborah mentioned running in her bio, and Linda mentioned running in her bio. We have 4 doctors here. Which this was not intentional on my part, I promise you. I went through our previous authors, and I picked authors that had another book or had more stories that they had published since we last talked. And just by coincidence, you guys have these things in common. So we have a doctor of chiropractic. We have a veterinarian, doctor of veterinarian medicine or science. Did I say that right?
Medicine.
Okay. We have 2 PhDs. We have Linda, who has a PhD. We have Mike, who has a PhD. Coincidence, both of them are Georgia Tech graduates. And let's see, all of you have written a series, or at least stories that have repetitive characters in them. And you also, all 4, have very professional and high achieving careers, which I do not feel worthy of chatting with you guys because of like the brainiac in the room, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my best to get through this. But anyhow, welcome. The way I thought we would do this is I'll ask a question, and then we'll go around and let each of you answer it in turn. And we'll just start with who I see first, and I'll go left to right. I'm not sure if my screen is in the same order as your screen. So, okay. All right. So the last time you were on Off the Shelf, you had recently published a book. Catch us up on your writing life since then. And Kathy Tully, we start with you. And by the way, if I accidentally call her Liz, I apologize.
That's fine. I guess my routine is kind of the same. I don't know where I was in the publication series schedule back then, but I have 6 in that series now. So I actually brought a couple of them here. I went from full novels to a couple of novellas. One was like a summer novella. I don't think you can see it because I have the blur on, but inspired by, and this is, I'd like to maybe hear from the other authors too, if they get inspired by, like, or get ideas, like we were just talking before. I had been watching I'd been watching a documentary on HBO about Robert Stigwood. If you don't know the name, he had he was very influential in disco music. He had the disco music label back in the 70s. And it just kind of permeated into what I was writing, where the side character, or the character of Dr. Susanna, she was going to go on a vacation to Florida from Georgia, and they were going to drive down to Florida. Now you can see the mess, and the disco music. It wound up being called Disco Disguises and Deception. She takes a vacation and goes. Her backstory is she was a New York City cop, a transit cop, like one of my best friends growing up was. And she goes down to Florida, and they're listening to disco music. There's a disco marathon on one of the radio stations, and that got written into the story, the disco music. They wind up at the radio station, which is like a building, like an office building, and the whole thing kind of plays out. They have a disco dance contest and all that stuff. So that just came from, remembering. I think we're all old enough on this panel to remember the 70s and disco music, and just being interested to watch that. So, I also have a Christmas one, so I'll just show you that one. So yeah, so cozies lend themselves to the different holidays and topics, and I have 6 in that series, and then what we call a reader magnet, one that I give away for free. And since then I've started a new series, and it's kind of morphed and morphed. I thought it would be maybe a side character in the first series, but she's kind of taking on a life and a backstory of her own. Just about finished with that. I'm having a hard time getting those final chapters out. And I think it's going to be more kind of modern, not backstory, where they're going to be podcasting. I think I decided that they're going to set up a podcast in that first book, and then that'll carry through to the series. That'll be part of the story and part of the thing that the gang does. So, but as for writing, still get up early in the morning, as early as I can. And right now it's hard because I love to garden, so I'm out in the yard too. But try to get the words done early. I think a lot of us do. Linda will tell you. I mean, Deborah Mitchell will tell you what she does. But yeah, I keep chipping away.
So you had asked a question of the other panelists, and I am fine with us going in that direction. You were curious if they are, I guess, inspired by like what they come upon out in the world.
In the real world.
Yeah. Do you guys want to chime in on that? Deborah.
Well, as writing a veterinary mystery series, many of the characters in the books are inspired by my real life clients, or a mashup of patients I've seen over the years. So I'm still practicing full time, and am probably bombarded daily with inspiration for characters anyways. The plots don't come through they come usually when I'm out running on a trail is when I come up with the next weird idea or the solution to some plot. It's when my brain is in a stream of consciousness mode. And I'll have to stop in the trail now as I've aged and send myself an email with whatever I thought of, because if I wait until I finish my run, I'll have forgotten it. So yeah, most of the mine come from my patients I see every day as characters, and not the main characters in a series. Those have been established since book 1, but the small bit part characters that come in each novel come from my real day clients and patients.
And patience, yes, I know. I'm gonna have to start bringing my dog all the way up to the mountains, or out. Where is it? Alpharetta? Is that where you are?
Yeah, I do house calls, so I
Yeah.
try and stay outside the perimeter.
Well, I was gonna say, well, we could make a day of it. You can visit Liz and I both, since we both are in the same area. And then maybe Wagner will inspire you to include him in his in one of your stories. Okay. So, Deborah, since you we're answering Liz's question, let's
Mhm.
just go ahead and have you update us on your writing life since your last interview with Off the Shelf.
Okay. I think I was on just almost exactly a year and a half ago when I launched the first book in my Coral Shores Veterinary Mystery Series titled Trust the Terrier. And since then, it's been a bit of a blur. I just got a contract for my 6th book. 4 are written, and 1 I'm writing with a imminent deadline. Well, imminent January 1st, but still, I just started writing it. So it's been a life out of balance, I'll have to say, but those are all quality problems I'm not going to complain about. But I have definitely, like Liz said, shifted my writing to early morning. I often wake up super early, but I can go back to sleep. But now I just go with it. I just get up at 5, go make an espresso, and start writing. So I can sometimes get anywhere from 500 to 1,000 words in before my day starts. And anything after 2 p.m. is all downhill. I have no late day energy, so it has to be early morning running too. So running competes with writing, and I'm definitely more out of shape. But for me, I wrote the 2nd book, Parrot Prose, which is out in print, and the 3rd just got a bow wrapped on it. I've boxed myself into a corner using alliteration for all my titles. So the 3rd one is Marina Muse, MEWS, for a cat. The 4th I'm writing is Follow the Frenchie, and the contract I just got for the 5th in this series will be Bordering on Bedlam, featuring a border collie that lives on an orange grove farm. But the most exciting news for me is the very first book I ever wrote, which is the very first pages I ever read at one of my very first Sisters in Crime meetings in the Smyrna Library, where I was so nervous my hands shook, is going to be published on September 11th. It's
Oh, yeah.
not a cozy. It's a murder of mystery about a murder hidden in the aftermath of a hurricane in Key West. That features former special agent Mick Nassau. And it's my first baby, so I'm pretty excited about that. So I'm going to shift my attention to supporting it this fall and getting out to do a bunch of events. And the only other funny thing, maybe some of you know, is Mick Nassau, my character, was actually named after a cat that I met in practice in the DC area. So I don't think Mick is alive anymore, but his name
Aw.
lives on in a character that's super dashing. So
Well, can I interrupt just for a
yeah.
second,
Yes.
talking about cute animals? The series I'm writing now has a French bulldog named Milo, and I got that name. A patient just asked me a question, and I remembered the story. I came home from work one day, and there was a bulldog or a pit bull, I don't know, a little dog ran around the corner as I was pulling into my driveway, and a woman was chasing him in flip-flops and shorts, and she was not able to keep up with this dog, and she was yelling, Milo, Milo, get back here, Milo, and he did not listen to her. And that's how I picked the name for the dog I have in my series, Milo.
I hope she
The
caught
poor woman.
him.
She didn't catch him. She didn't. She came back, like I live on a corner. She came back around the corner exhausted and cursing and saying, I'm done with him. And he kind of meandered around the corner. Like 20 minutes later I saw him, but she just was like, I'm not chasing this animal.
I wonder if that running, and Deborah, you may know, is a pit tendency. I've always thought it's more, like a border collie or
They have
a
such little
pointer.
legs, but they go so fast.
Yeah, well, Wagner has some pit in him, but he also has a pointer. And if he gets a chance, that dog is gone, and we cannot catch him. He's gone. We just have to wait for him to come back and hope he comes back, because
It sounds like
we
this
have to
lady.
keep him on a lead. So I don't know, Deborah, is that a pit tendency or no?
No, you might not like my answer.
Uh-oh. Okay.
It's just a training.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Like being able to train a dog to have a recall off leash when
Okay.
distracted. It's kind of the unicorn of training a dog. Will they come when called if a squirrel runs across their pathway?
Yes.
But yeah, I
You're
mean,
right. I don't
sure,
protect him.
I have one that would just run straight into like a oncoming train if he
Yeah.
was off leash. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, in our defense, we
Yeah.
got him as an adult. We rescued him, and we didn't know he was a runner
Yeah.
until like because we would let our lab out,
Right.
and she would stay in the yard, and he was like, "See ya," and we were like, "Uh-oh."
Dogs that
Knew-
follow their nose may be more inclined to take off. So, and greyhounds are notorious. They're never off leash.
Yeah. So lifestyle adjustment for the Gepfers because we have to put the dog on the leash and walk him versus just let him out. All right. Deborah, I do have a question because you said, well, you told us about the untied lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to just, well, it's not really a question. I just wanted to say, I was at that meeting, that Sisters in Crime chapter meeting where you read that. And I like when you like finished, I was like, what happens next? Wait, keep going. And then through the years, I would check in with you
Yeah.
and say, how's that book coming? Because you had me so intrigued. So I'm
That thing
glad.
was rewritten, I don't know how many times. So when I started writing it, I didn't know anything about anything, but I love the story. And so as I've continued to learn and hopefully become a better writer, I did shelve it for almost 5 years and then came back to it. I had to read it from scratch. It had been so long. And I find it's more difficult to rewrite a book than to edit a book heavily than to just sort of rewrite it. I just was trying to like cut and paste, and I just stopped and went and started writing it from how I felt about it now. So I have a whole new beginning and a middle and a tweaked end. So, but yeah, it's it's my baby.
Well, I was a beta reader for you, and I know you mentioned that it's changed.
Yeah, I've since added in an Army Ranger and a whole takedown scene at a cruise
Yeah,
port and
good.
some more black market bad guys. So, yeah, hopefully you enjoy it.
I'm going to. I know I will. All right, Linda. Hi, LM Whitaker. Linda, tell us. And you were one of our first guest authors on Off the Shelf.
Oh,
And so we're going back to 2021. And at the time you had your debut novel. So if that helps, I mean, because Liz mentioned, she's like, I don't remember where I was. Well, yeah, because she was already into her series. So fill us in. How are things going?
Unlike these super prolific people, I published a second one. So the first one was called Crucible of Steel. It's about my character Georgia Steele, and my second one is Titanium Web, which continues Georgia's progression, her story. I have a third one drafted, and hope to get that out. It will probably be early next year, if I'm telling the truth. But I have another standalone that I'm querying right now. I'm going to see it, querying agents. We'll see what happens there. But so then I'm going back to working on the third Georgia Steele book now. So that's where my writing status progress is. But I thought I could tell you all a funny story about slime mold since you asked.
Yes.
Since I brought it up.
Inspiration from, as I said, everything. And I have a lot of great friends who send me geeky science articles. Mike, feel free to partake. I love geeky science articles. And that gets me thinking. So my second book was inspired. Inspiration can be good or bad. Inspired by Elon Musk's company Neuralink that puts if you've seen it, the brain implants to make you be able to communicate with computers without having to use your hands, which ostensibly is great for people with that are like quadriplegics, right? Great, could really change their life, but we all know he probably has really much worse ulterior motives, right? Than just doing all this to help quadriplegics. So that was this inspiration for my second book. And I have slime mold in there, and I also watch a lot of Nova and look around at the world. And when I had a software company, we also studied natural systems in terms of how to natural systems are the inspiration for most artificial intelligence, whether it's your neurons in your brain or it is birds flocking or ants building their structures. All of this is many of the things that we do have and accomplishments we've made in these advanced science because it's founding in nature. And slime mold is no exception. Slime mold is a wonderful creature because it can find its way into, like, you think it's nothing. It's an organism that can divide and come back to itself, and it can be two or one, and it actually, like, it's a strange thing. It's in its own little animal kingdom, I think. Anyway, one of the things it can do is find paths to food optimally. It will reorganize itself to make these optimal pathways, which is all applicable to all kinds of things in our industry and technology. And so there are algorithms that people have made mimicking slime mold to try to find shortest and optimal paths around cities and waterways, and how do you construct telephone networks or anything like that, or waterways, and yes, all down to slime mold. So nature's a wonderfully beautiful thing, and it inspires me every day.
Very cool.
Sounds like the Bermuda grass in my yard.
Is that in any of your stories yet? Because I can see where that could be something like really
My story,
fascinating.
Titanium Web. It's already in here. You can read it. Yep.
Okay. All right. Cool. Okay. Mike Cobb, you are up, and you are my most recent alumni guest. Mike came on our program at the end of 2024. And you would think, oh, wow, well, that was so recent. What can he share with, what's new? Well, there's a few things that are new. Mike, why don't you fill us in?
Okay, before I do that, I want to apologize. My internet stability is really bad, so I dropped off earlier, came back on. Sorry about that. I love technology when it works. When it doesn't, it can be a real pain. I have to tell you, that was so cool, Linda. I did not expect that we would end up talking about slime mold on this panel, but that was so cool. As a scientist, I'm so intrigued by that. Anyway,
Talk later.
I think, what's that, Linda?
Talk later.
That's another podcast.
That's right. I think since I was on, I think I have 2 books, new books, but I'm not positive.
Yeah.
And I have to apologize. I didn't bring copies of my books to show, but anyway. So my 3rd book, You Will Know Me by My Deeds, is actually a sequel to my 2nd book, The Devil You Knew. So as Don said, I write historical fiction. So it is based in large part around the Atlanta child murders from 1979, 80, 81. My 4th book, which is a novella, I finally, I think, have learned how to write short books because my first 3 books are really like 400 plus pages. And my novella is like 184 pages or something. I think I've finally figured out how to do that. Anyway, it's called Muzzle the Black Dog. It's a psychological thriller. It's based in part on Eric Rudolph, the Olympic Park bomber, and his brother Daniel. That's the side story that's sort of woven in with the fictional story around this character named Jack Pate who lives in a cabin in the woods. Right now, I'm working on 3 things, trying to juggle 3 things. You could probably characterize it as a 3-ring circus, maybe. I don't know. I'm working on a film adaptation of Muzzle the Black Dog because a lot of people encourage me to do that. Writing a screenplay is just, I'm pulling my hair out because it's such a different experience, and especially trying to convert a psychological thriller where a lot of the stuff is happening in Jack Pate's mind into a medium where, unless you want to do voiceovers, which I don't want to do, you only have action, dialogue, and visuals. And so that's really interesting. And then I'm working on a sequel to my very first book, Dead Beckoning, which is a late 19th century historical fiction. And then I'm trying to find an agent for a nonfiction true crime work about a murder, a cold case in Atlanta from a murder that occurred in 1970. It will be the first nonfiction work, serious nonfiction work that I've published, and I'm learning how different it is looking for an agent for nonfiction compared to fiction. Anyway, I'll stop there.
Well, I want to ask you a question about the cold case. Is that the one you're connected to? Is that the story?
Yeah, it's a woman whom I knew. I was 17, young kid trying to find myself, as a lot of 17-year-olds are. And she was 23, took me under her wing and meant a lot to me at a time in my life when I needed somebody like that. She was brutally murdered, execution style. Found her body on a construction site in Grove Park in Atlanta. And anyway, I'm convinced there are overarching themes of class, race, gender, and police malfeasance. Um, I think, Deborah, I've told you a little bit about this when we got together for lunch the other day.
Yeah.
Maybe, I forget, maybe I did. Anyway, so that's the other thing I'm working on.
Mhm. I'm curious about that because you said it's unsolved. And going back to your novels where you were addressing the Atlanta child murders, is the fact that now that was supposedly resolved, and yet you introduce a different theory, and it's got some recognition when it was published. There was mention of it on the news and everything, that it was a fresh look at those cases. And so I'm excited that it actually may spark some more investigation and potentially like truly like resolving it, even though it's considered solved. So in thinking about the person, your friend, that's not solved.
Mm-mm.
So it's true. So you don't have a conclusion.
No, I don't. And I've thought a lot about that. So I've been working with a private investigator for 6 years, and we have the entire police file. The police have been very cooperative with us. They would love to solve the crime. But except for the bullets, which were diverted to the ballistics lab, all the other evidence went missing shortly after we know everything that was in the evidence box. Everything went missing
Hmm.
shortly after her murder.
Wow.
There was a close connection, very close family connection between one of the top three homicide detectives on the force at the time and one of the suspects, a married man with whom Susan, my friend, was having an affair.
Mm.
Um, because when I first embarked on this journey with the private investigator, we hoped to solve the case, but absent DNA, unless we can find somebody who's still alive who can come forward and knows something, and I'm sure there's somebody out there. We've interviewed a bunch of people, but a lot of people have passed away now because, you know, she was 23 at the time. This was 1970. The person she was having an affair with was 28, and all of the police now the detectives have since died.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I cannot put a bow on it.
Yeah.
All I will end up being able to do is speculate as to what might be, what might have happened. That's all I can do, but I still feel compelled to tell her story.
Well, I'm glad. Do you have a title of that one?
The title that I am using right now, and I think it's the title I'm going to use, is The Last Thing She Said,
Mm.
which is basically, I remember the last thing she said to me.
Mhm.
And that's the title I'm using right now.
Well, honestly, best of luck because it sounds like a fascinating story, and I
It's hard to
will.
write. it's really hard to write because it's so close to home. But anyway,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
You kind of you just answered it. That was a great segue into my next question, because I wanted to ask each of you, based on your most recent writing, and I know some of you have more than one book to reference. Based on your most recent writing, what was your biggest challenge with that particular project? Mike, do you have anything more to add? We'll start with you and work our way around.
The recent published work, like
Well, yeah, we
mostly.
can talk about the recent published work, but you had also referenced how hard the emotional connection to the last thing she said. And so, yeah, so you don't have to talk about that anymore. But so let's talk about the
Well,
one
I
about
will
Eric
tell you one
Rudolph.
of the challenges I have with because I write historical fiction and because there are factual things that are woven through every one of my books in and around a fictional story. One of the biggest challenges I have writing historical fiction is not letting the facts get in the way of a compelling fictional story. So you have to figure out how to weave those two things together, if you will. I can easily, because I love history, I can easily get bogged down in a lot of factual detail that actually drags the story, the the page turning story down, if you will. Um, and so finding that balance between the historical fact and the fictional story is sometimes a challenge for me, if that makes sense.
No, I think it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And that's probably why a lot of people don't necessarily venture that way, because they're compelled to try to be super factual, but yet there's a lot of speculation. And then how do you, especially if you're dealing with real life, people, and how do you represent them? I mean, I find it actually a fascinating,
Yeah.
to take
Well,
on.
and just quickly, and I don't want to monopolize this, but just quickly, with respect to You Will Know Me by My Deeds, look, there is documented evidence out, I think evidence out there that that Wayne Williams did not kill all of those black children, which is woven into my book. He was never convicted of killing one black child, not one. He was convicted of killing two black men.
Yeah.
But once he was convicted of killing those two black men, and there was some circumstantial evidence with respect to some of the kids, he was convicted in the court of public opinion. He was convicted by the press of killing all the kids. The police washed their hands of it, and he's in prison right now. I'm convinced he didn't kill all the kids.
Mhm.
So anyway,
Mhm.
Wow.
So, Linda, I was going to kick it to you. Tell us, what was the challenge, one of your biggest challenge in writing your second book?
That's been a while.
Okay, not your second book, the one you're working on.
Because because it really, so my third one was, it like called to me, and I was in the middle of writing my third Georgia Steele, and the book that I'm querying now, it just wouldn't let me not write it. And I was it's the challenge is it's a book about being different, and how in today's world with the influencers on media, how things get picked up and people's lives get turned upside down for no reason, whether it's the Haitian immigrants who, oh, they ate a cat and therefore now we're going to destroy that whole community, or we have a weather balloon and we think it's China and we're going to attack Asian people, or we have trans children and we're going to pick on them, and just the craziness that's out there. But I couldn't, I had to write a book about that. I'm not a member of any of these groups. There's so many, any pick a group, any person. So I had to invent a new group. And so I picked actually not a new group. I also wanted this to be real life and not a fantasy novel. And so I picked the Blue Fugates of Kentucky, if you've heard of them.
Yes.
So the blue, yes. So in the about 100,
Wow.
1800s, yeah, even to 1975, there was a group of people that had a genetic mutation that lived in the Appalachians, and their skin was blue. And they were treated as outcasts and freaks. But then we had medical treatments now, and and it was because it's a recessive gene, so they had to be inbred, kind of to have that come forth, right? So, but they were treated as freaks and weirdos. So my hypothesis was, what if we still had blue people today?
Mm.
How would they be treated? And so what happens is, I'll just give 1 second, and because that was my big challenge. And I had a friend actually came up with it and said, why don't you, come up with something like this, and that you can layer on what's happening, what got me angry in the story I wanted to tell, but not be, yes, Sharon says, sort of like Wicked. Exactly. I had written it before. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Right. And so what happens in the story, though, is my protagonist is a CDC scientist, and who has a blue in her family. She's not blue, but and blue babies begin to be born to non-blue parents in rural Midwestern America. And when the first births happen for curiosity, but as the numbers grow into the hundreds and the thousands, America slips into kind of chaos and panic. And it's the blue people, though they have seemingly nothing to do with it, increases. And so I bring in the science. How is she going to find out what's happening, and how media acts, and the politicians and big pharma wanting to capitalize on it. And I just had to get my anger out, I think, at all these people that were making me angry. But that's what it's about. And that's how I did it.
That's fascinating.
It
That
is.
is fascinating.
That's really cool.
What's the title of that one?
I've called that Zillikin Blues. And Zillikin elements I made that was kind of responsible for this genetic mutation.
And this is your standalone.
Well, yeah.
Yes. Okay. And do you have is it in progress, or are you shopping it? I'm trying to remember. Sorry.
If I can't get anybody interested, then it'll come out sooner. And if I come out later, but time you have me on, I'll have.
Okay. So, Liz, why don't you tell us, you said you were starting a new series. And so tell us about that, and what has been the most challenging about that for you?
Well, the most challenging thing is that I thought it was going to be a side series. I set it in the same town. I had a massage therapist that I worked with who I just loved her, and she was one of those people who always had all those kind of kooky out there ideas, although they're not all kooky. But I thought that I would make this character, because cozy mysteries, right? You can do far out stuff, and you want kind of wacky characters to show up, and you want some fun hook, but keeping that character, I mean, at this point, I don't think she's even going to be a massage therapist. And then last year I put out a Christmas novella, and I say that she's a massage therapist, so I'm not gonna have to change that. But it's, as a pantser, what I enjoy is having an idea of what I want to do, and then developing the characters as I write. I don't plot them out. I don't do character interviews. That all that kind of stuff just stymies me. And Deborah knows this because we did a talk at the Georgia Writers Museum about cozies. But I do keep a series Bible, and I'll backfill that in, like as I'm typing in some new aspect of this person's backstory comes out, then I might add that or whatever. And it's the hardest thing has been that she keeps changing, and I kind of have to go back to earlier chapters and change those, or I have a notebook full of notes of what I have to change about her, which normally I don't do. And one of the things, like when you have interviews like this, and you're working on a series, and you say, oh, I have 6 or 7, and then people go, oh, how do you do that? Well, when you have the tone down, and when you have the voice down, and when you know most of the characters and their backstory and the setting, it's easier because you're not developing that stuff from whole cloth every single book. You know, you're not mulling over what's their backstory and what does it mean and how much should I bring out and how much should I, you know, just ignore just because, you know, you see people say, as long as you know it, it's then the character has it in them and stuff, all these writing tips. So I found that just the most difficult. And, you know, my time, because I wasn't working full time. I was working part time previously, and now I'm working full time again. And just being able to try and, you know, use my time wisely, not doom scroll on through my emails or whatever, you know, trying and being self-published, I think, and I think Linda is too, right? Both of yours are. You know, you're juggling so many balls when you self-publish, getting out a newsletter and doing your marketing and having somebody do your covers. So, you know, all that stuff. You know, it's time consuming, but the real trick has been trying to figure out who this character is, what the actual backstory of her, you know, because she comes home to this town and she's going to inherit a house. So she has family in this town. So those elements kind of anchored me and took me away from the idea that she would be showing up at the chiropractor's office doing massages. That's not going to happen, you know, so that whole thing. And, you know, it's internal. I think when you talk to writers, they're all laughing and smiling and stuff because these are the struggles we have. Like these guys, I like to walk, I don't run. And I kind of gave up even trying to go through plots and stuff in my head because I always wind up thinking about something else. But I get my best ideas in in the shower. It's like, oh, wait, that's great. Let me get out of the shower quick and jot down a note. But yeah, just trying to figure out who this character is and how she fits in this town. And in fact, you know, one of the things I had done, like in my first series, a potbelly pig shows up in like the third book. So then she's a character in the next couple. And I was going to give this character a sugar glider as a like a little sidekick. And I had some really funny stuff about the sugar glider and how she's carrying him around as she leaves the house and he's in this like little holder, like backpack. It's like a sugar glider holder shaped like a banana. And I thought I was being so cute and funny. Oh, that's going to be so funny. I'm going to get some jokes out of that. And then I think I'm just going to eliminate that whole thing because after a while, I just stopped writing about that animal. And now the dog shows up and I'm like, I can't do both. You know, I can't have somebody babysitting the sugar glider while she's, I don't know. So it's, yeah, that whole just, things changing on me, which, you know, it's fun. It's part of the process, but it just stymies my brain, I guess, my writer brain.
You might have more than one story going on or more than one
Well,
character that you're developing.
and I do have a final, and I don't know if it's going to be the final, but I had started another story about Dr. Shine, and she meets the character in that story, but it's like the timelines are messed up. So that, you know, what I have finally decided was the character that shows up in that Dr. Shine story is going to be this original vision of this Molly character. I'll have to give her a different name and she'll have the sugar glider. In fact, there's already scenes written with the sugar glider. But this other series, she's just going to be different. She's going to be have different motivations and different backstory and, you know, but it's fun.
Will it still be a cozy? You can stick
It's still going to be a cozy, yeah. And that's the thing. Other people, like I have on a back burner, you know, and Deborah knows this too. When we did this lecture, we talked about tropes and we talked about cozy genre expectations. And I just did a online seminar called Inkers Con in June, the first couple of weeks, and I attended a lecture about tropes, and I was like, I still I need more, you know. And I've actually started writing a book about tropes, about cozy tropes, because the intellectual side of me really overanalyzes a lot of this different stuff. But you know, and so you hear somebody talk about a trope about a bride. Oh, and you could use the bride trope, and I'm like, well, what does that mean? What kind of bride? Is she a jilted bride? Is she a runaway bride? Is she a happy bride? Is she an older bride? You know, so that's kind of something that reared its ugly head again the other day, where I started to open my spreadsheet and look at that. So it's, you know, it's the creative mind. I was trying to, you know, and I was going to say this with Mike, because obviously you had this trauma with someone you knew. And I really feel like one of the reasons I write, and one of the reasons I like to write humorous novels, is because I want to have a sense of control. And Linda, you were saying this, figures into your frustration and your anger. I want to have a sense of control. When I'm writing, I'm controlling. I'm controlling the bad stuff. I'm controlling the good stuff. I'm controlling the dialogue. If I want it to be humorous, it'll be more humorous. Sometimes I have to just cut dialogue because I have these characters interacting with each other and goofing off and stuff. And then I'll be like, that's too much. It's too much for this one scene. I'll just take a lot of it out, because that to me is the fun, of exploring characters and just kind of making a world that I would want to live in, as opposed to going outside and getting hit by a meteorite, or having to jump out of bed in the middle of the night because a tornado siren went off, or the political stuff is going on and you can't sleep. So, but I guess, with Mike, there's probably, you wanted an element of closure too, with,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
with that part from your past. And I think also, and I'll stop after this because I was just talking about this with one of my patients. I think as you get older, you just have a lot more stuff rattling around in your head. You've seen more stuff, you've had more losses, you've lost family members and friends, or you've had different areas of your life where, obviously when you're in high school, like I think all of us are probably on Facebook, you see all those people and you're like, who are these people even anymore? I haven't
Exactly.
seen them in 30 years. Why do I even want to read anything that they write? I mean, not that I have anything against them. It's just your life has moved on to so many different things, but yet as older people, we have these memories that some of them can seem as fresh and new as yesterday, so you have that kind of crash of these different, like you have your creative mind, and then you go wandering into the past, and just different nostalgic thoughts, or different thoughts about family members and stuff. I think that, and I think that's what we spill out when we're writing.
Yeah.
Well, before we move on to Deborah, I just want to mention that Linda Foster is on, and she is a huge Kathy Tully fan.
Oh,
She has read all of your work, and Dr. Susanna Shine, and she let me know that you were on Off the Shelf July 22nd of 2023. She knows better than I. I knew it was 2023, but I couldn't remember exactly when. And
oh,
she subscribes to your newsletter.
oh,
And so
thank you.
you've got a good fan. You've got a great fan right there.
It's nice to know there's one.
There's there's at least one. There's two. Deborah says two. All right, Deborah. So yeah, let us tell it, because you've also switched genres, and you've kind of alluded that sometimes coming up with a creative title because you started something and you're like, okay, now I got to go with it. So what's your biggest challenge of recent?
Well, it's still mystery crime fiction, switching from a true cozy, like a very warm, fuzzy cozy, to Untied Lines, my McNassau Key West mystery. Probably was dealing with dialogue. So it's definitely not a thriller, and it's not got a lot of graphic anything in it, but it's still grittier, but it has to be grittier than a cozy for sure. And it's also a male protagonist, so it's easy writing a female veterinarian. I live that every day. Even though I do have Dr. Emily Benton, I live through her vicariously. All the things I didn't do in veterinary medicine, I make her do. But I'm thankful I have a weekly critique group. We meet in person for 2 hours every week. And in that group, I have Marine Corps fighter pilot, retired, and I have a World War II Marine veteran who
Wow.
grew up in the Bronx and was a war correspondent and traveled with Bob Hope. So whenever I'm writing my very macho, not macho at all, but my dialogue of men interacting, I think I have it pretty good, but they are my sentinel, because we read aloud our pages every week, and it's amazing work, like group space. We are supportive of each other. We laugh. I mean, I don't ever miss my critique group, but they're the two people that are like, yeah, the guys don't say that, or like just try to make an authentic voice between my main character Mick Nassau and his best friend Jack Barton, making that authentic. So I've had one World War II veteran from New York, and then my former new Marine Corps retired fighter pilot keep me in line. So flip-flopping, I'm back into the world of cozy, right? Which I think maybe comes more naturally to me, but the other was fun. So I had to embrace it, get a little sexier, get a little grittier.
Do you think that you'll continue, whether it's McNassau or not, will you continue maybe going in that direction in addition to continuing your Dr. Emily Benton?
That will be up to my publisher. I will follow the contracts.
Okay.
If Mick Nassau does well, starting in September, then I'm sure it's set up to be a series. But I'm not going to start writing it while I have these other contracts I have to fulfill in the cozy world.
Are you thinking that you're going to try to go through the alphabet for Dr. Benton?
No, I think I'll get to 10.
Okay.
That would be my goal. I'm at 5 right now.
That's amazing that you're already at 5.
I have 2 subplots that move along. One is the building of a sea turtle conservation center, and the other is the romance between my veterinarian, Dr. Emily, and the detective, Mike Lane. So he declared his love for her at the end of book 3.
Aww.
Maybe by book 7, there'll be an engagement. By book 10, there'll be a marriage. I don't know. That'll be the end of it, wherever that wraps up.
But that is sort of intriguing, Deborah. You could go through the alphabet like Sue Grafton, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like I'm not going to repeat letters. So
yeah.
And the second one was a parrot. That was easy. The cat one, Dawn, I harassed Dawn for weeks trying to help me come up with a title for that one. And the Follow the Frenchie was easy. A friend of mine's daughter came up with that after the first book, Trust the Terrier. She goes, you should name one Follow the Frenchie. I'm like, okay.
Thank you.
And then Bordering on Bedlam, I was at the Atlanta Writers Conference, and one of the fellow board members helped me. I'm like, I need a word for a title that begins with the letter B to rhyme with or to go along with Border Collie. And we mulled it over at the registration desk, and he's the one that came up with Bedlam, Bordering on Bedlam.
That could be a lot of fun.
I have no idea, because so far I've had to have a male dog, a male parrot, then I had to have a female cat to keep all the cat and the female pet gender population happy. I'm back to a female Frenchie, and there'll be a male border collie, so I'm gonna have to go back to a cat. So book 6 will be a cat. I don't know.
Yeah.
How about like an iguana or a pig?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, Liz's character has a pig.
The pet has to, maybe a potbelly pig. I'm thinking eventually, because the Sea Turtle Center will open, there'll be something at the Sea Turtle Center. But the pets, they don't talk, they don't have psychic abilities, but they do move the plot a little. So, the sugar glider wouldn't work because it's always in a pouch or, so. I'll stick to cats and dogs mostly.
It did climb out at one point. Yes, I do have a scene with it on her shoulder.
Yeah, the parrot was a bit of I wrote it into the book too as a veterinarian, like, don't bring me your sugar gliders or your pigs, because you need to take your parrots to the avian veterinarian. And even the thought of seeing a ferret or like a guinea pig was
It's fiction.
I always worked with a vet who was happy to do that. So.
F is for ferret. Come on, give us a ferret.
Yeah.
She's got Frenchie. She's got the
Frenchie. Okay,
Frenchie.
Frenchie.
Yeah, but you don't have I for the iguana.
Yeah, no iguanas. No.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be.
Practicing in Miami once, a vet tech came back one day and said, oh, there's a client that just walked in the front door with their snake. What should I tell them? My answer, no one could hear me but the tech, was tell them to turn around and walk back out the door they came through and then give them this card. Go to the exotic veterinarian nearby. I don't
I
want to see your snake. I know we're supposed to do all things, all creatures great and small, but no.
no.
Dr. Emily could become dissatisfied and want to spread her wings and become an exotic
That's why she has the Sea Turtle
veterinarian.
Center. She's busy. She has a wedding to
Okay.
plan one day.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I is for icing.
yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, cute. With an iguana.
Yeah, I'll hit you all up for when I get around to finishing this Border Collie book. So
How about the lascivious lemming? You probably wouldn't. You wouldn't want to treat a lemming either, would you?
no.
A larcenous lemming. They could be stealing things.
Could be a pelican that eats something that they take out of its mouth, and that's a clue.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in
Okay.
all my books, the pet's owner is often associated or the victim of the crime or missing or kidnapped. So again, most people don't own a pelican or
Could be on their
lemon.
deck, right?
Exactly. It could have like
Florida.
homed
The
themselves.
pilfering pelican.
Well, my theory is I'll see how well the cat book does, and then we may quickly get to another cat.
Okay. Well, I am not surprised that our hour has flown by. I knew it would be difficult for me to get through all of the questions I have for you. I do hope that we've touched on, things that our audience will be intrigued by, and they will go seek out your books and subscribe to your newsletters and join us again. But as we wrap up, there's one more thing that we have to do, and this has become part of our off-the-shelf programming, which there's a few things that I do in off the shelf that are consistent, and this has become part of it. So, Sisters in Crime Atlanta has a monthly program that is known by the name Murder by the Book. And this is where an audience of readers, anyone can attend, writers and readers alike, but we are attending as readers. And what we do is it's by Zoom. It's on the first Saturday of every month. And we, as readers, we talk about what we have read recently and how we liked it. So I'm going to ask each of you to share something that you've read recently and tell us if you enjoyed it, if it's something you recommend. And Deborah, starting with you again,
Okay.
because you guys are moving around my page, and Deborah, you're up.
Last year at BoucherCon, I met author Kathleen Donnelly on a panel, and I hadn't got around to any of her books yet, but I am 2/3 of the way through Chasing Justice, which is the first book in her National Forest Canine mystery. The main character, I think it's Maya Thompson, is a former Marine who's back struggling with PTSD as she's finding her footing. Is like, honestly, as soon as we end this Zoom call, I'm going back to the book. I'm loving it. So it's sort of like the best of my animal world of mystery fiction with some thriller aspect and a great character. So she started a new podcast. I think it's called, I wrote it down. Sit, Stay, and Read. So it's like other authors that write with animals in their fiction. So yeah, I'm excited to have finally gotten around to it. My to be read pile is way too thick.
Are you going to be on her podcast? Has she invited you? Awesome.
Yeah, we have a date set up in July. I don't know when it will air. It's on
Sharon,
like a national radio network. So
that's great. And as Liz said, Sharon as well. Congrats, Sharon.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
So Kathleen was on Off the Shelf. So, sounds like,
I mean, she's a phenomenal person just to meet and get to know. And her books are amazing. So
yeah. So if we do this again, this is our trial run of rebooking previous guest authors. We'll, maybe Kathleen will be able to join us. So, all right. Linda, what's
Um,
on your shelf?
I took, when Carmen Amato was on Off the Shelf a few months ago, she recommended Carla's Choice by Nick Harkaway, which continues the John le Carre, George Smiley series.
Oh.
I read that. It was so fantastic. I've started a podcast. I'm going to pitch Carmen, not me. It's called From Fact to Fiction. You can find it on via my website or Substack. From Fact to Fiction, thrilling book reviews. We unpack the fact behind the fiction of specialty thrillers. Maybe Mike, I hope you'll join me one day. And Carmen, with her, 3 decades of work in the CIA as an intelligence operative, there's no one better to talk up to, talk about Carla's Choice than Carmen. And I got some fantastic, behind the scenes, her opinion of what's real, what wasn't real. And it was just great. And that's it. Sorry to talk so much, but it was fantastic. The book is fantastic, and Carmen was fantastic talking about it.
Thank you. All right, Mike, what do you have to share with us?
Okay, well, because I've recently joined a book club, and I'm just loving the fact that I'm reading a lot of books, one a month, that I otherwise wouldn't read. I have read my first book by Carl Hiaasen. I don't know if you all have read.
Oh, yes.
I've never missed a
I
book.
am so
Yeah.
I read Bad Monkey, and I swear to God, I love Carl Hiaasen. He is so damn funny,
Yeah.
and he
Very
has
funny.
the ability to weave incredibly sharp humor in with a compelling crime story. I'm hooked on the guy.
You can watch the series now with Vince Vaughn too.
Yeah, yeah.
Bad Monkey.
I never
Oh.
saw the series. I want to go back and watch the series now, but
Yeah.
the book is
It does the book justice. So
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's always nice, isn't it? I mean, how disappointing when you fall in love with someone on the page and then when they're depicted, on screen, you're like, that's not what I had in mind. So, all right, Kathy Tully.
Okay, so I have also been inspired by Sisters in Crime, but by the podcast that Julie Hendricks does. So I picked up The Cipher. I don't know, does that show backwards? But Isabella Maldonado. So Isabella was interviewed. She also has a crime past. She was a captain, but I think in the police. I think she was a police officer. Oh, FBI. That's right. She was the first Latina in her department to obtain the rank of captain, and then she retired and began writing. And she writes with Jeffrey Deaver now too. But this was one I picked up. It's called The Cipher, and it's got a really great female character, and the writing is just awesome. It's spot on. It pulls you in from just page 1. So I really enjoyed that. But it's kind of like a FBI procedural thriller. It was good. And then also from our group, one of our own, Anne Michelle Harris, I read North.
Oh.
So she was featured at one of our events, one of our chapter meetings, where authors pimp their books. And I made sure to get there and pick up her book. And it's fantasy, like high fantasy, which I really enjoyed that one too. And I also got on one of my Facebook groups. One of fellow self-published authors has a podcast on a place called Podbean. I don't know. You have to sign up for it. It seems kind of limited, but it's free, if you want to do podcasts there. But they also have free audiobooks. And I actually listened to The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. So I would recommend some Mark Twain if you never have, which I haven't since like high school or something. So that was really funny. It was a fun book to read, and of course it's controversial in that there's a lot of N words in that one. It's not a ton of them. But I really enjoyed his take, that 17th century, I guess 1800s. So that was really enjoyable too.
So have you read James?
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
James.
Yes. Who's the author?
Oh gosh, I can't remember now.
Percival? Is it somebody Percival? No, I might have that wrong. I apologize.
Oh yes, I did see something about that. Yes, because James is Tom Sawyer's brother or half brother.
Well, instead of Jim, right?
It's Jim.
Instead of
it's about Jim.
Oh, right. Okay, now it's Sid is the half brother. And because I read Tom Sawyer so very long ago, I don't really remember most of it. So I wanted to try and find an audio of that too, but it wasn't on this free anyway, and I couldn't find it on my library one. So I wound up listening to Remarkably Bright Creatures. So that was another, and because I had a cold and I was just kind of sitting around not doing my normal stuff. I got through that. That is amazing. That is so much fun because it's got a point of view character of an octopus that's in a aquarium. So that was really fun too. I recommend listening to that because the guy who did the voice of the octopus was very good. It really pulls you in.
I've heard good things about that book as well. And I actually have a copy, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. So, real quick, Tanisha has a suggestion for your pelican character. The pilfering pelican. I like it.
I do
can't
too.
use P. I just use P for parrot prose.
Oh, darn it. All right. Something
So
with a
you can
seagull?
repeat.
Seagull?
I
No, she doesn't
can,
want to
but
repeat.
I'm going to avoid it for a while.
Okay. All right. This has been a ton of fun, and I really thank all of you for being here today, especially us navigating this like completely different platform. And I do want to say, I think it was our first year, Liz and I did have a panel of short story writers. But when we went to start it, the guy that had coordinated it, he was like, "No, I got it." And he just took over, and Liz and I were like, "Okay, have at it." So this really was my first endeavor in this platform. I hope it went well. I feel like it went well. It's up for debate if we'll do it again. It's a conversation to be had by the Sisters in Crime Atlanta board. But so before we go, again, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for participating. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for regrowing my to be read pile.
To be read. Just
It just grows and grows, as you can kind of see behind me.
Hey,
And
Dawn, thank you for all that
Yes.
you do.
aw,
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you.
Really.
And also, I'm really pleased to hear how many of you picked books or authors from off the shelf, because that's the point. It's to introduce writers to readers that maybe they may not stumble upon just by going to, the bookstore. And so it's good to know that it's serving that purpose. So as a send off, I want to talk about the audience and you guys, of course, but you're aware of all this, in joining us for other things that Sisters in Crime Atlanta does. I already mentioned that on the first Saturday of the month, we have our Murder by the Book that is free, open to the public. It's by Zoom, and we would love to have you again because it just increases our ever-growing to be read piles. And it's a lot of fun to hear what people have read and their take on it. So really enjoy it. We have Linda Foster. She actually joins us from Kenya on the first Saturday of every month, and she reads a lot. So she's a huge contributor to that program. But our in-person meetings, oftentimes they're hybrid. So if you're not local and you cannot make the in-person meeting, they are telecast by Zoom. And those are the second Saturday of every month. We meet at the Decatur Public Library in downtown Decatur. And then here on the fourth Saturday of the month, we have our off the shelf, also free, open to the public, and by Zoom. And so I just want to quickly tell you that our July off the shelf will be Saturday, July 26th. Our author is Sarah K. Stevens, and she has written 7 psychological thrillers. And her day job is as a developmental psychologist at Penn State University. So she loves using her training to craft darkly human stories with killer twists. So I am really looking forward to having her on. And all of our information on programming is available at the Sisters in Crime website or the Facebook page, but our website is www.sistersIncrimeatlanta.com. Hey,
Thank you very much, Dawn. That was
Thank
super
you,
fun.
Dawn.
it was fun, and I loved your interactions with one another.